call this meeting to order at 6 p.m. Tuesday, January 9th, 2018. Are there any additions to the agenda for routine administrative matters and or pressing matters that will require ratification at a future meeting?
Yes, I recommend an executive session to discuss labor relations.
All right. See? Okay, executive session. Is there anything else?
No.
All right, we have the minutes of December 8th and 12th.
I'll move approval.
All right, so,
I'll second.
all right, any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. All right, is there any public comment on items not on the agenda? Anything? Nope. Shane, what do you have to report?
Not much other than our utilities departments did a phenomenal job dealing with the cold weather over the past week and a half. And, there were a few incidents here and there, nothing of a significant, real significant issues. But, now, and Brian's now taken over as of January 1st as the chief operator in the water department.
Is that Brian?
Brian, want you to stand up and say hello? Brian Jocelyn has taken over as from
Welcome.
assistant to elevated to chief operator, and so far he's done a great job, and look forward to him continuing that good work for the coming years. That's all I've got really to offer right now.
Thank you, Shane.
It's a tough couple of weeks weather-wise.
All right, so the first item on the agenda is your report on the investigating what it would take to dissolve the fire department, what steps would need to be taken.
Yeah, you'll recall on November 28th, the board tasked me with to investigate the process of dissolving the fire department if necessary, and I did put together a 7-page report in that, giving a board an idea of the existing situation we have, more recent history. Talked a bit about the statutory framework in which the department works, both at a state level as well as the village charter, and talked a bit about the assets, liabilities that the department has, including the building and the apparatus, and kind of give what I estimate to be a blow-by-blow, and in the final page being steps to dissolution, if that were to take place, and it is something that could be done. But a long story short is there is no, at least if it were to happen in short order, it would be difficult to judge how fire service would be provided in the village, and that the Rockingham Volunteer Fire Department is not necessarily, they're not equipped necessarily to do it. If they were, from their existing manpower is, they do an excellent job covering the balance of the town and the interstate and all that, but I'm not sure if they're manned to take over the village as well at this time. But there are funds that are held by the village for fire services that could be given to them or to another department to provide these services. For the town to create its own municipal department, because the Rockingham Volunteer Fire Department is its own entity, registered with the Secretary of State's office, but for the town to establish its own fire department would require town meeting vote, and that's not been discussed by the select board as to establish that. I did meet with the select board a week or so after the trustees voted in November, but it was too soon for there to be any thought of any significance on the part of the board to determine whether or not it was something that they wanted to take on. So I put together the report. You've had plenty of time to review it and read it, and if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them. I did, of course, bounce this off of the whole thing off of a number of people, the village attorney, the town attorney, the departments, and a lot of very helpful input from everyone. I'm sorry, Chief.
I thought you did a nice job on the report. The existing relationship between the town of Rockingham and the Rockingham Volunteer Fire Department? Is there a contractual relationship between the two? I mean, obviously, the Rockingham town meeting, there's a budget for the fire department, which is approved as part of the budget.
Correct.
But is there, in addition to that, a separate contract?
I'm not, I've never seen anything like it. There's nothing I'm aware of.
I did quite a bit of research looking for when they were established.
Yeah.
When we went through all this, and we
Yeah, I think it's
found
August
nothing like that.
1970 or something when they were established.
Yeah.
But
It's fairly typical for towns that have volunteer fire departments to have a separately incorporated fire group or whatever.
Yep. Yeah, it's not unusual at all.
The,
I think in Saxon's River, is that a department of the village, if I'm not mistaken? Yeah, so it is there must have been a village vote at some point to actually establish a department. But yeah, the Rockingham Volunteer Fire Department is registered, as I said, with the Secretary of State's office as its own independent entity. It gets a good amount of its funding from the town at each town meeting. The town owns most of their equipment. I think they have a couple of pieces of apparatus or a boat or something like that we don't own.
The building they're in.
And the building, obviously, the town owns. But it's been a long-standing, very positive relationship.
Well, would you check on that to see if there is actually a contractual arrangement?
I got to think that there isn't.
There isn't.
You know, we pulled a lot of the Kathleen Needhawk, town clerk, did a lot of research for us and went back and found, you know, when it was first established, the discussions about it the year before. There's nothing in there we've seen that they would indicate. It would be a lot of research to do that, and there already has been a good deal of research. I'm not aware of anything.
Okay, it's just strange that.
Yeah, well, we have a book, and we have a whole list in the file full of all the agreements that we hold, and Kerry's been here for 21 years, and I'm not aware of anything that, you know.
All right, that's fine. Again, I think the research is good to have, and whether we.
Well, we did the research. We
Whether
really
we have to-
went back and looked at old select board minutes and all that, and there was no indication of any kind of agreement, written agreement.
Is there any other?
What-
Yes.
What I don't see in the history is at what time the fire department became a union fire department of 4 firefighters plus call. It doesn't say that, and that's not also not in our in the charter either.
It's
So
fairly recently.
Yeah, it was,
Around 2000, wasn't it?
oh no, it's more than that, isn't it?
it's,
Has it been more than
That was since the 80s.
About 2010, 2008?
no, it's not.
Not that young.
I can go back.
So that's why
and look. I
I'm
have it
wondering,
in my
because
phone.
that is a change, a significant
All
change.
firefighters are not in the union.
Right, and they're not. So that separates the
But it's-
type of department that we have historically as opposed to what it was after the mid-'20s when we changed it to a full-time chief and,
I read
they
it
went to the
somewhere in the minutes,
combination.
so it's out there. I just don't remember what it was.
Yeah.
And I'll check the fire committee, because I know we talked about it, and the date
Yeah.
did come up
It did.
during, but I can't give you a positive, I don't remember. Do you remember, Gaetano? When they unionized?
Some of the history
I
I
know
came
it came
across
up,
because it
but-
was a question to somebody up north too as to whether or not the deputy chief was able to be a member or was considered a command or supervisor type thing too. I think it was about the same time, at least from what I
The
read.
deputy chief used to be,
He's in the.
Yes, he was.
yeah, even a dozen years ago when we
Right.
negotiated when I was here before.
Yeah.
He definitely was, Unuzi. But that's a good point, that, I just,
That would be historic information that would make a change to the
Mm-hmm.
department.
I found a typo in there or two, so.
Are there any other comments on this report? All right, well, thank you, Shane.
Okey-doke.
Next, Water Department. We have Brian Jocelyn here again, and we have a request for a grant for fluoridation equipment. And when we talked about putting this on the agenda, Shane, you said you were going to look into if we accept this grant, because we use this equipment for other things than fluoridation.
Yeah, well, and Brian, you can jump on this as you would.
Yep.
This is for several different pieces of equipment, one of which could be used for not just fluoridation, but for other water department purposes. And one of the reasons, that we're applying for this, it's free money, nothing wrong with that. And what I just handed out, which is the actual application itself, which I just got a copy of today, and I apologize for not getting it out any sooner, but it talks further about the reasoning behind the application. And actually, why don't you talk further about what the actual equipment is, because I'll stumble all over myself.
Well, actually, it's everything you need to add the fluoride to the water. One is an online analyzer, which is probably the most expensive, it's around $7,000. The other thing is a spectrometer, which we actually, when we test the fluoride to get the actual readings, that's what we use. And then we can do the same thing with our chlorine. The one we have now is 10 years old, and we sent it out once and had it rebuilt, so, I mean, it's getting ready to be replaced. And the other piece is the day tank, which makes the fluoride saturation and pumps it to the actual water main. And that was probably $1,800.
Okay.
So, yeah, and we're one of only, I think, 17 communities throughout the country.
I think they felt sorry for me.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, sometimes.
I'd make a motion to.
Well, I was just going to say, one of the things is that I was concerned about, and I know that over time, the whole issue of fluoride has come up over and over again. I wanted to find out, and I've not seen the final of an agreement yet with this, whether or not we were obligated to keep this for a certain number of years. If say the board comes together and says, we don't want to do fluoride anymore, do we have to pay these folks back? We got to give it back? And I did get a copy of an agreement with another municipality that doesn't have any kind of obligation of that sort. So I'm pretty confident that we would not be obligated to
Maintain.
to pay them back for it if there was a decision at some point not to fluoridate the water. I know it is a hot button issue for a lot of people.
Yeah, I'd like to ask, when did the community vote, was it a community vote to add fluoride to the water? And if they did, when was that?
Well, a dozen years ago, when I was here, there was a big discussion about it, about stopping it, and the decision was to maintain doing it, so certainly more than a dozen years.
When the plant was built, it was built to add fluoride.
To add fluoride?
Yeah.
Because I've had a lot of people in the community brought this up. I'm not amazed why some of them didn't come down tonight, but
Yeah.
who are concerned about fluoride in the water. I mean, I've read lots and lots of reports about external application of fluoride being fine. But it says on your tube of toothpaste, don't swallow this, for a very good reason. Because the internal ingestion of fluoride can weaken bones, hurt your liver, and a number of other things, and cause other types of diseases to people who are sensitive to it, who have maybe autoimmune deficiencies. So I am concerned about it. I would like us to stop doing it, but I realize it would have to be an article on the annual meeting warrant. It would be, wouldn't it, to get it stopped?
I don't
believe
If the
so.
village voted to
No.
put it in, you have to vote to put it out.
I'm not aware of any
No.
village vote to do it.
So it
My
was just
understanding-
added without community, okay.
Well,
It's up to the trustees to decide, from my
Yeah.
understanding.
I chaired that debate with some people here in Louise Light back, maybe it was not even 10 years, well,
About a dozen
right
years
before you
ago.
left, yeah. Then what I want to mention is there a time frame on this and what it is? And I was contacted by two people, one last week and one this evening before I got in here, that mentioned that they are going to petition for removal of fluoride, so. So is there a time frame on this?
Yeah, I think they wanted us to actually,
Conference call on.
It was already.
well, there's a conference call coming up, and then they wanted bids on equipment, but we wouldn't need to go out to bid because it's just replacement of existing.
Yeah.
By
Yeah.
February 8th?
February 2, I think
February
it's on the
2,
front
February
copy,
8?
yeah.
Okay.
Of the one you put in our packet.
So the one topic would be, like you mentioned earlier, if there was a petition, for example, and it was successful, what would be the criteria in the event there was a vote
Yeah.
to stop the fluoride?
Yeah, I want to make sure that
Yeah.
we're not
Yep.
financially bound in any way.
Right.
Yeah, because otherwise I'd love to take the money, but.
I'll make a motion that we accept the grant and, no,
Authorize the manager to sign?
authorize manager to sign.
Sign any agreement, whatever it is. But, I mean, if that agreement does call, bind the town, the village, excuse me, financially, would you like me to come back to the trustees?
Well, it sounds like we've got equipment now to be replaced that's on its last legs.
Mhm.
I think that if we replace it, and then for some reason the town decided, or the village, or whatever, decided that they didn't want fluoride in the water, and we had to pay them back that's a better thing than not taking it in the first place. So it just makes all the sense in the world to accept this. And as I said, I was present when this debate took place, and there are people like Deborah who have this feeling, I think totally unfounded, but the good that it has done, and particularly in a village like this, with our demographics, to add rampant tooth decay on top of all the other issues that we're facing would be a severe burden to the society here in Rockingham and Bellows Falls. And I think that I know in the 50s, 40s and the 50s, when I was a little kid, we didn't have fluoride in the water, and I have been a lifelong in fear of going to the dentist because of all the cavities that I had. So it's not to be taken lightly. I know there is a science, and I think our water people do a very good job of making sure that the concentrations are within very safe ranges. And again, I think we should take advantage of this. And if for some reason this came up as an issue in the future and it was voted or decided to stop, then it would be stopped. But I think right now we ought to do the financially prudent thing and just accept this.
Just to backtrack a little bit, I guess I'll second it for discussion. And so,
Mr. McAuliffe, I don't want to start a debate here tonight. Apparently, there's already been one, and maybe it's time for another. However, you're saying my feeling, it's not a feeling. It's from years and years of reading information. And I, as a child of the 50s, was taking those tablets on a daily basis in my classroom, and I had bad teeth anyway. So I do not believe, based upon all the medical information that I have read over the years concerning fluoride, that it should be in our water. So it's not a feeling, it's an actual understanding of knowledge. And you can disagree with it, but don't call it a feeling. That's what I'm saying. I'm upset by your calling it that. It is not a feeling. It is based upon factual data read from many industry standards of other doctors who don't agree with it, understanding where fluoride comes from. That it is a metal mining byproduct, which has been forced upon the community of the United States and other countries who have stopped using fluoride in their water for many years. Therefore, perhaps it is time for the community to have another debate about fluoride and getting it out of our water, because I don't believe that we are that more healthy for it. Perhaps in the application on your teeth, but not from ingesting fluoride.
all right. So just potential compromise, since the letter says by February 2nd, no later than, But, so by our next meeting, could you possibly have an answer of if
Yeah,
there's any obligation?
they actually promised me a contract by today, and it didn't come through. So I'd asked for one, example from another community, and so
Well, I would-
I read it. It doesn't make any sense the way it's written, but we'll see what comes through, and I was told we would get one shortly.
He handed, this came, but this was in the packet. Sorry, Shane. But, so it's reasonable within 2 weeks, we should have the contract?
Yes, I would say yes. That's what they promised me, one by today, and so I imagine there'll be one at least by the end of the week.
So we have the motion on the table to vote on, but I would say that by next meeting, we should have, my worry is just like, I'd like to update our equipment
What would
if
be the-
possible, but I don't want us to be obligated to continue.
Okay, and would we be looking at roughly, what, $14,000 in equipment in the event
It was
things
14?
changed?
Okay, I made a
Yeah.
mistake before, yeah.
I hear, having chaired that debate many years ago, heard both from positive and pros and cons, and there was a member of the board at the time, Louise Light, who was a nutritionist, I believe, and some other criteria. I understand where you're coming from. I think it'd be with that taken into account, it'd be in the board's best interest to not forego any available funds in the situation that we're in at the plant there, needing replacement and otherwise. I'd be inclined to move forward with this and to support it. And if it was so the will of after a debate or whatever, things would change, well, then we'd deal with it. But I would encourage us to go forward with it to at least secure the funds. And
Well, I'd like to see this on the next agenda, but then
Okay.
I guess I'll just call the question.
well, if you feel comfortable with that, it's all right. All right.
It's been made and seconded.
Yeah. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. All right.
So 3-2 it passed.
Yeah, motion passes, 2 dissenting. Next order of business is the finance department.
I want to, first of all, thank
Yes,
Brian
of
for
course.
putting together the
Yeah, thank
application,
you.
and with all that,
Thanks.
we'll be talking about it further. Thank you, Brian.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, of course, yeah.
So the trustees made this decision to put fluoride in and ultimately have the decision to take it out? There was no panel or discussion from the people that live here?
I mean, this would have been back in the 60s when that plant was built, but apparently that's,
Yeah.
Actually, the plant was built in the 90s.
oh, was
Okay.
it?
Yeah.
I-
89,
Yeah.
90. But they may have been adding in that little pump station before.
Yeah.
Might you want to have
There
a
was a,
updated meeting with the people that live here and bring medical science from each side?
Yeah.
Have a
That's
discussion?
what
We did, a dozen years ago, we did that. It was
Yes.
a couple of hearings. They had folks from the Department of Health, there's
So now
some
we're at a-
dentists.
Now we're at a point where you may or may not need some new equipment and funding. Maybe it's time to have another discussion just to see who the people.
well, let's see who wants to do it.
Who does the
okay?
petition? If there's a
Sure. Let's see who
petition
wants
come
to do it.
forward, we'll have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely, back then, the room was packed. We had somebody, there was,
It's still a hot topic.
yeah. I mean, I distinctly remember one of the people who was on the school board being here, who was married to somebody here. And there was a gentleman from, I think, Westminster or Putney, and it was a funny comment about,
Oh,
where'd
they'll
you
come out of the woods.
planet Pluto or something like that, because it really got a heated discussion.
They'll come
And,
out of the woods, believe me.
Yeah. But it was, the debate was good. So, yeah, certainly a debate doesn't hurt, but I'm glad we're going for the money and put the time in.
We've actually lowered the levels. When I first started, they were running about 1 to 1.7 parts per million, and now we're down to 0.50 to a 0.70. That's the range we target.
Is that like parts per million?
Parts per
Yeah.
million.
All right. Is there any other further?
And actually,
Oh.
about 4 years ago, I lived right next to a water plant. I have to have a well, so I'm too close. And my well water tested higher for fluoride than what we were putting in that day.
Oh.
So there is natural.
Naturally occurring fluoride in the soil, yeah.
Well water.
Well, something to think about. Is there any other comments about this issue before we move on to the finance? All right, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks.
All right, so I've heard our finance director cannot make it this meeting. So we'll continue with discussions, but we may have to wait until our next meeting to get more answers.
Yeah, Ron had to leave for a family matter, so he just left just a little while ago, so I apologize for that, but it's important. But anyway, on the budget, we're at 50% of the budget year. And again, Ron, I had expected Ron to talk about it, but I had circled a few things. Our audit seems to be, we've talked about that in the past, in general fund, we're over by $900. It's got to be just that it's not being applied to either the water or sewer, so.
Shane?
Yes.
Back on the balance sheet, could I? Near the bottom of the page where it says due to town, that was the financing of our payment to TransCanada.
I don't.
You show a balance of $52,940.
I don't know that is what that is. So it could be.
That was if you add 23,249 to that, you get the number that was there at the beginning of the year, which is the 76,000,
Right.
which is what the town financed for us.
Right.
Our payment this year was $15,238. You've reduced that by 23,000. That's an incorrect number. The 52,000 should be 60,951. Or change or whatever. But clearly the budget amount of 23,000 included two pieces. One was the 5-year refunding, or the first year of the 5-year refunding of that 76,000, which, as I said, was about 15,238. So that number needs to be changed on the balance sheet. Okay. But then go ahead. You were talking about some expense items. I've got some questions on earlier expenses.
Well, one of the things of note is just that we've been tracking is because we've basically closed out the full-time firefighters. We're pretty much right on, we have some payments due this week, cashing out some of the benefits and over vacation, things of that nature. So it'll change a little bit. But if you look at page 4 of 23, you'll see under full-time firefighters, our budget's $125,820. We're at $112,700, so we're pretty much right on the money on that. This payroll, this paycheck, right, that happens this week will include some money, but we're pretty much right on the nose. And then also with overtime, that'll be closing out right around budget, if not under budget. And then police overtime on page 5 of 23, we're at, we're tracking, below budget. It's at 45.5% of budget as opposed to being 50% of the year. So we're in good shape on that. Yeah. So all in all, there's some pretty good trends. Vehicle maintenance, police department's a little high. I know we had some issues there. But again, Ron was going to be speaking to this more than I was.
I'd like to go back
questions?
to page 2, page 3 of 23. I'm sorry, 2 of 23. You show the audit, the single audit of 5,900. It was 5,000 last month. Why are we paying more than the contract?
Oh, yeah, I raised that a couple of minutes ago. I have a question mark on that as well. Like I said, I assume that it was just paid out and not applied to water and/or wastewater. Because we do have, as you say, we do have a contract and it has to stay at that amount. I don't know. I question mark that as well.
Okay. But you're going to check on that?
Yep.
The office operations, there's a couple of accounts BFVC materials supplies at 89%, software at 103, and IT outside support at 93%. Are those numbers going to continue to go up? I mean, are we?
I don't think those are project costs. I think we've already purchased the software we want to purchase. And materials and supplies, I don't know, we buy bulk paper and things of that nature up front. But it does, we have stacks of paper right now, which should ought to get us through for a good long time. Carrie, do you have any input on any of that? It's really Pam who does the purchasing.
Yeah.
But, we just had, I had my APC uninterrupted power supply blow out on me the other day, and so you have to buy a new one of those, and those are expensive. So that sort of stuff comes under office supplies.
The IT support, is that something that we're likely to see go over budget?
I think we will see it go over budget. It depends on what the projects are, what the issues are. We've had some, one of the things we've been trying to do is make sure that our servers are properly protected, and so a lot of that effort goes in that direction. We have glitches from time to time. We have a fellow, Theo Kovalev, who comes every other week. He used to come every week. He's here as needed, but right now, so every couple of weeks he comes in, and if I've got an issue, and it works on my computer, that gets split in half, town and village.
Well, we took a second bite of the apple here, and I think obviously we've got to watch those kinds of costs.
Mm-hmm.
The next one, of course, is the elephant.
I want to go back. That's one of our primary tools, though, is our computers, and so we have to make sure that
No, but
whatever we do, we got to do that.
you set a budget, or the trustees set a budget, back in March. We reset this budget in November.
Mm-hmm.
You had a fresh look at all of these items in November. We approved a new budget in November where I think we increased the IT outside support number,
Mm-hmm.
and we're already at 92%. So I mean, we aren't even a month through. So I think that I'm not quibbling with the fact that some support services are needed. What I'm saying is, we're very concerned about our budget here,
As am
and
I.
we reviewed it again in November.
Mm-hmm.
But the elephant is the next one, okay? We're at 116% of the village attorney budget, 140% of the union negotiations. Other professional services, I don't know what that is. That's been zero up until this particular financial statement, and we show a $3,425 cost. What is that?
Oh.
What is the other professional service?
That would be I think that's where we're putting contracted service. Well, having Nimerick in there, Cynthia Stoddard, she has been giving us 2 days a week, $98 an hour. I think that ought to be.
That's for financial support?
Yeah, so that probably
That
should
shouldn't be
be.
there.
Right, should probably be under contracted services,
Yeah.
$3,410, where we have $6,800 there. I'll look into that.
Didn't I see her the other day? Is she still coming in?
Yep. I have her, training with, Ron has just been here a couple of weeks, and she is helping to train him on the day-to-day stuff as well as the Nimerick software.
So that's going to run us over budget. I mean, it is.
Well, we've got it in the
Practically
budget.
speaking.
But
Okay.
it shouldn't belong, it doesn't
Doesn't
belong
belong
here.
there.
Doesn't
Yeah,
belong
we
here, but-
have it in the budget extending into January, and so we actually met the other day to talk about how far we wanted to go, and right now we're once a week, but there might be times where it needs to be twice a week.
But I think the fact that we have a new finance director with a new system, I can understand the need to
Oh, yeah,
have
yes.
some training, so,
Oh, yeah.
for sure. But again, I use that pro bono figure for the legal services. I think, the $150 an hour rate might be a great rate or something, but it's just, we've got such a long way to go for this year. We got 6 more months. And at this billing rate, we're getting killed. And again, we looked at it again in November and boosted, we didn't boost other professional services because I think that's a misallocation of an expense.
Mm-hmm.
But we boosted these. And, we really do need a break on those expenses, so.
So
Anyway.
I'm assuming it might be appropriate to say here that with the new union meeting coming up, that we still stick at not having the attorney there present, is that what?
Oh, right, for the
Yes,
negotiating
yeah.
sessions. My
Right.
Gosh, yes.
So,
Now, there may become a point when you need to consult with the attorney for, if you're getting down to language and things like that.
because I know he asked.
Yeah, well, that's something, we have an executive session at the end of this meeting. We could
Deal with that.
The other thing, and this is it isn't that it isn't budgeted, but I noticed on this financial statement that the full amount of the BFDDC amount of $7,500, which we agreed to leave in the budget,
Yep.
has been paid.
Yep.
And I thought we talked about maybe doing it in a couple of installments, just to see how we're doing near the end of the year. But, obviously it's a done deal now.
Well, it's actually a done deal once the budget's passed, because I had looked into that because I was, if you remember we were talking about cutting the budget. I suggested zeroing that budget out. But it turns out there's Vermont Supreme Court case that if a municipality puts in funding for a not-for-profit agency, like this or other ones that we have, if that budget passes, that's a contract. You have to pay it.
Oh.
And it was a South.
Well, I don't think we were talking about.
Yeah, I know,
paying.
but
I'm just
there was a
saying.
South Burlington case. We just did it, got it over with, and it's done. They, in fact, at that moment, were in need of funding as well. So it was very helpful to them, but it's easier for us, frankly, just to pay it once and get it over with. But again, we have a legal responsibility to pay that.
All right.
Yeah, I remember that we had that discussion about not paying it right off the bat and waiting and maybe paying it in 2 portions, but we didn't actually vote to do that. We just,
Oh, no,
we voted
no.
not to, just
No.
to zero it out.
And payment was delayed, it's just, it wasn't
Yeah.
broken up.
Yeah.
I guess it was delayed, yeah. And again, my favorite one is on the top of page 4.
Yes, I got it circled as well.
That should be, the actual should be 0.
Well,
And,
again, we've spoken to the auditor about that, and I would strongly recommend when the auditor comes on the 30th, we address that one, just to make, so that we get it right. I just want to make sure we get it right.
Well, certainly, as you know, there's 2 pieces to it, Shane. Okay, one is the $15,000
Correct.
piece. The other is the $8,000 piece.
Correct.
There's no basis for the $8,000 piece, right?
Right.
Yeah, I
You were
mean, that's clearly should not have been paid because there's no obligation to pay. There's no agreement to pay.
Agree.
Okay?
Yep.
So, I mean, that goes without saying. I mean, the fact that we expensed the $76,000 in last year's financials to make a payment on that liability and make another, and charge it as another expense, we're doubling the expense. Makes no sense.
Right, we,
It's just, so I mean,
I thought we had reversed it out, but maybe we didn't, so I'll take a look.
anyway. That's all I've got.
Any other issues you'd like to bring up tonight, Deb?
We looked at the audit section under the general fund, but I'm concerned about water and wastewater, so that page 15, 23, and, so, what was that? That was wastewater, and oops, before that, page 10 of 23. My concern is that we are lumping consulting, legal, and audit into one line, whereas I would prefer, myself, to make it clear cut that we are spending such and such amount on audit, on an annual audit, by having a separate line in water and wastewater that would coincide with the amount owed in general fund. So it's easy to tell. But when you look at this, I'm assuming that some of this money is not all audit.
Right.
Under water, we have $7,600 spent out of 10, and under waste, we have $4,400 spent out of 10. So it's not even. So therefore, if we're spending the appropriate percentages in general fund, water and wastewater, general government, water and wastewater, this would not, that would not, no, those numbers wouldn't look like that. So it's off kilter. I would prefer to see the audit listed as a separate line item.
Maybe for next year's
For
budget.
next year's budget, yeah.
Makes sense.
Oh, is that all?
That's all I got.
Stefan or Steve?
Yeah, well, it's-
I have
On
nothing
the
else.
on the wastewater financials, again, this is the big, you know, we're anxiously looking forward to those numbers. The due to other funds, we're up to $711,000 cash that we're borrowing from the water fund and the general fund, et cetera. Obviously, the payment for that has to come from the grant that related to the sewer construction. So, I mean, getting an update on that is, you know, I think the work has been done. I think the process by which we seek reimbursement, I would hope, is moving faster. I think that number was minus 500 and something last month. So it's up to 711. And again, I know we've got money coming from the grant. We've already incurred the debt. So a lot of questions still on that. But it looks like by the end of the month, we'll have the financials.
Yeah, that's our goal at this point. We've been feeding information to, we've been working with an organization called RCAP Solutions, and it's a not-for-profit that works through and is associated with the USDA Rural Development. It was at their recommendation that we work with them on this cash flow and rate structure. And so we've been feeding information to them, giving them spreadsheets. They have some methodology to work it all through and in the end, come up with what the, you know, we were surprised how much information they need, because they want details on purchases and all kinds of stuff going back several years, which is good, but it's, hopefully it's not too busy what we get back, but as long as it's accurate and useful to the board, that's all I really care about.
Well, like I said, I'd be just happy with the revised financial statement and a cash flow for this year and next year. I mean, that's what we need.
Well, that's what we asked them to do it for a 3-year period, and you know, they've got all the debt schedule, they got all that, you know, everything we've expended over the past several years and planning to in the future.
I think and I emphasized in an email that to Shane that wanted to see it for both water and sewer, because when we look at the rate increase for sewer, depending on how strong a position we have in water, we could conceivably have a rate reduction in water. I'm just throwing that out.
Yeah.
To help offset the increase in the sewer, so.
And we are doing it for both water and sewer,
Yeah,
yes.
okay, good, thank you.
The only other thing I would say is we do get copies of the delinquent reports. I hope people are looking at those. Delinquent taxes, and the total amount due is over a penny in tax for us, and one person in particular is on a third of that cost. And the same thing goes for delinquent water and wastewater. I mean, that's $55,000.
That's a more significant,
That's significant.
yeah,
And-
very significant.
And we need, I mean, I don't know what the mechanisms are, but we need more efficient mechanisms in order to get these paid. I mean, you don't want to continue to make new revenue streams when you can't collect on what you currently have as a revenue stream.
I did contact the Ray Masuko recently about going forward with tax sale. It is a 150-day process,
Yeah,
so it's,
5 months.
yeah,
Yeah.
you bring us into the summer.
Now, that doesn't work the same with water and wastewater, though, does it? In delinquents,
We can,
Well, that's how you
the
collect.
waters, we can shut it off.
Policy.
right? So,
That's not a favorite thing to do, but
know.
you can go through a tax deeding process.
I mean, there's
But
some
I think it would be
significant bills in
helpful
here.
to get an idea on this water and sewer, particularly the big ones, whether we've shut the services off, or if we haven't, why haven't we?
Well, sometimes it's, I mean, if, with water, if there's a curb stop, it's easy. If there's no curb stop, we have to dig up the road. Correct me if I'm wrong, we gotta freeze it up.
Yeah, you have to jack the road, we don't have curb stops. We're getting them, we maybe.
Yeah, we don't have them
1,100
everywhere.
Connections, we might have 400
It's a-
curb stops.
It becomes a construction project when you want to turn that off.
I see.
And so it's not ideal.
But in the meantime, they continue to get water service. I mean, I can't tell from this report whether this is just one tax year or multiples.
Multiple, because there's some that you
It's
can-
multiple,
it gives the tax years. And the-
Yeah.
What, under the water wastewater?
yeah.
Yeah, if you look down, maybe two-thirds of the way, the real big number there,
Yep.
that water's been out for 3 or 4 years.
Been off?
Well, it doesn't have a.
And then what do you do? Take them to court, or can you take them to small claims court as opposed to tax sale? I don't know if that's a municipal
Don't know.
process.
Good question. I just don't know.
I know there's one on the delinquent taxes,
Yeah.
significant, that's in bankruptcy. And there's nothing
Yeah.
we can't.
But without bankruptcy, I mean, they might have other properties that could attach. I prefer people pay their bills, but we're looking for ways to cut costs, and we have money right here that we can't collect.
Are there any other comments on these?
Is there any way, here's a question for you. If they're not in our municipality, does that give us any, can we go back on the other town? Because that particular one that you were looking at there that's North Westminster.
Yeah.
Well, that's, I don't know the history of that, but I know there's several in North Westminster who haven't paid on different things, and
Yeah.
I don't know what the,
What do you say?
Comeback
Go to the
is-
municipality, ask them to pay the bill?
Well, I'm just wondering, just,
That's how I thought it worked.
you can't shut off a hydrant. That's the problem.
Some of those are just fire protection. in
Right.
Oh, wow.
Westminster.
And there was some disagreement of some people whether or not they were obligated to pay because there was some criteria. I remember something about a $35,000 delinquency there. In fact, I contacted you about it when you first came on board there in reference to a Westminster Select Board meeting or a couple of meetings that I had.
Right.
And I'm not sure if that ever got taken care of at all or not, or,
I'm aware of.
and, but I think, yeah, there was a big to-do about you know, I got my own well, but just because I'm within so many feet of a hydrant, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the previous manager had gotten into that, so there may be some history. Or
Yeah, I know there's some
notes
records of it. I know
Yeah.
Pam and I had talked about it some, but haven't gotten to it.
there. Yeah.
Is there anything further on budget status before we move on to fiscal year 2019? All right.
I just wanted to propose to the board that this idea of having an opportunity to meet with the department heads, the four people, to talk about their thoughts about budget prior to putting the first draft of the budget together. I think that could, it could speed up the process in a sense. And it would give us a chance to talk about some of the issues like the, plans for how we continue with enforcement of parking and those types of things.
And we did that at one, didn't we do that at one point in the budget this last year? We did actually have the,
Meet with
each of the, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it was down the process, but,
Right.
yeah, I remember upstairs, we had everybody come in and.
My plan was to, much like I did with on the town side, is get some direction from the board. The board says, no increase, whatever the heck it is. And what I would normally do is just give direction to the staff. Please prepare your budget. Let me know what it is you need, but these are the guidelines. And they would propose a budget, and I'd put everything in together and make some recommended cuts or add additions on my own to make sure that we come in where the board wants us to go. And once we had budget, had budget discussions, absolutely have department heads there, because he knows more about his budget than I do, and same goes for other departments. But if the board would like to take a different direction, I'm certainly willing to entertain that. But again, to me, it all starts with this discussion tonight and some direction from the board as to where you'd like to see the budget go for the coming year.
I'd like to see level funding myself, but.
I'd like to see better than level funding.
Okay.
Because we've
Further
got,
reductions.
I think, one on my list, which is a short list, is no additions to staff. And keep very vigilant on expenses. Don't defer, I'm not one to defer things that should be fixed or replaced or whatever. I'm not suggesting that. But I think, being very diligent on that. And I do think that that we're going to have to spend some time on our surplus position or our fund balance position. And I think what was done last year is probably the better way to do it. In other words, instead of inflating expense items in hopes of operating at a surplus, I'd rather keep the disciplines in place on our budget and then address surplus as a separate item.
Well, it didn't go well last time.
No, I know it, but you're also talking about a huge increase in the budget.
I don't, one of the thoughts is because the 120-day notice, $240,000 was cut from the budget. Then there's 120 days notice for layoffs.
Yeah.
That making up that $240,000 really took place in only the second half of this year, if you look at a different way. So
Right.
I think the budget will be
will be
The level
less.
of funding the budget won't be hard at all, in my
Well,
opinion.
that, I don't want a level.
I was just saying, that's what she said, but I'm saying, level,
Yeah, yeah.
what I'm saying is level
That's
funding
the
won't be
minimum.
hard at all.
No, we don't want to do that.
But I would like to try again, like, as a separate article, even though it'll probably just get voted down, something specifically to address our fund balance issues.
I agree. I think it should be a non-budget type of thing.
Well, what you could also do, sort of the opposite of what was done a few years ago, where you budget a deficit, just you budget a surplus. So you keep it in the same budget, it's the same vote. This is the budget, that budget happens to be ending in a $58,000 surplus. You could build it in either way, either part of the vote or a separate article altogether.
Well,
That's obviously up to you guys.
I think what you're suggesting is that you would deal with that as a kind of a bogus expense item in the budget?
No. I would say
Build it in
that
as the-
you would be raising, let's call the number 50,000 for the sake of discussion. You'd be raising $50,000 more than you're spending. So in the end, you're budgeting a surplus.
But how would you show that on the budget?
If you
which
look at
line?
last year's
Oh, yeah.
budget,
Yeah.
you'll see that the net.
Last year,
the
they
net-
did a separate article, didn't they?
We did, but if you looked at the regular budget, you saw the bottom line, the net change was, the net revenues less expenses was zero. It was a balanced budget. What you could just do is have an unbalanced budget. In other words, you're raising more than you're spending. That extra money goes to your fund balance.
Right, but when you show the annual report, where do you put that?
Yeah, you'd have to
In the-
make.
It's there already, it's in the, we do it every year in the budget.
Right, but the annual report that the voters look at, they
Yeah.
read with the bottom line, you're going to show, say for instance, a $50,000 higher than the amount of money,
Correct.
required to run.
Is there a
But
line?
where do you put
As long
that?
as
Where's that, where's the line item that you're adding into
The
your
amount to
annual
be
The
report?
amount to be raised by taxes
Just there.
is
And that's it,
$50,000
just
higher.
there.
It's the
It
only
doesn't
place.
show in the itemization, it shows only in the.
Correct. Unless you wanted to, you could always show it as a,
As a line item.
And I would,
As a
an extra-
line item
I
of
would put
surplus.
it in the cover letter
I don't know about
again,
that,
like
but-
I did
Right.
last time.
Yeah.
but if you look at the budget from 2 years ago, the net at the bottom was a negative 58,000.
Because we use 2 cents and.
Right, because you reduced the amount to be raised by taxes. By
Right.
reducing that top line,
Right.
yeah, so if that had been increased by 58,000, there would be a zero at the bottom, the net. So what I'm just suggesting is one alternative, you guys do whatever you think is best, but one alternative is to just increase the amount to be raised by taxes by whatever it is you would like to put in.
But I think the better mechanism would be to address it in the idea, which I think is transparency, is to say, hey, look, here's the budget. This is what we've done on the budget, the expense budget, okay? And this is what we have to do to get a healthy fund balance.
Fair.
And then how it gets
Either way works.
put down in the
Yeah.
financials, because basically you anyway, I think the idea is it's a separate item
You can do it as a separate article.
and
Like goes
whether
down
we
last
do it,
year.
and I think it would be easier, quite frankly, to do it as a separate article.
Well, it got killed last year.
Well, that's, the reason we put it as a
Yeah.
separate article, like we had the option of not making it separate, but because there were so many increases and because it was so high, we purposely made it a separate article. But the thing is, others may disagree, but we desperately needed it last year. We need it this year, or rather, sorry. We
You
need it
needed
this
it
year.
last year,
We need
desperately.
it
Need it
next year. We need that extra money, just in case
And I think we can make
something
the
happens.
I think we can make the
Make
case.
the argument, yeah.
That's what I'm prepared to do.
Yeah,
So whatever round number we pick,
Right.
just something to give a little bit of a cushion.
And the town, not to change the subject, but town was having what roughly, there's a 1.4 million there as far as their fund balance reserve, if my figure's correct. So they're technically, when we mentioned that, was it the 15 to 16% that we should have on hand from a town standpoint? Not the village.
Town
They're
and
all-
village.
Both of
has
them
a-
are
yeah, has a-
16 to 20,
they both
I believe.
have a joint goal of holding between 16 and 20%
Okay.
of the expenses and a fund balance.
Okay. And is that 1,400,000 accurate that I say that?
That sounds high.
That's 27%. Actually, on the town, of that 1.42 million, you have to reduce it by 96 because we did some carryover. Long story short, the
Yeah.
fund balance there as a percentage of expenses is a little over 25%.
So it's healthier than what we,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
And so at this point, one of the questions is how much do they bring forward to either reduce taxes or to create reserve funds?
Well, I was thinking if we had to go knock on their door again. On their
Right
bank door.
now, Stefan,
Yeah.
we're showing a fund balance of roughly $80,000.
Here.
And I would
Okay.
say we should be at 200,
Right.
maybe even a little
Yes.
more,
Yeah, I
that type
understand
of
that.
thing. So
Yeah.
we're off by a fair amount.
Yep.
Okay.
Anyway,
Anything else as far as a directive, something, a specific goal?
So what I'm certainly hearing is that level funded at least,
no,
at most, excuse me. I'm sorry. That's what I've heard, so I haven't heard anything better or different.
One thing outside of
Well-
the fire is obviously going to be completely different. So outside
yeah,
of that,
well,
we're looking at.
but you've got a half a year of full thing, so that we got to have a reduction of that. What I'm saying is, if you say no new staff and diligent expense management, we'll be fine.
Any
Is
comments
that the
on
will of the
that?
board? Yeah, I mean,
Any objections or? Yeah,
well, okay.
yeah.
It would be helpful to, all right, but that's okay. I mean, I think we're going to be in good shape as we structure the budget because of the compressed nature of recovery of funds in this year. So I think it'll be easier to deal with, but, you know,
Because like let's say we would like to, and I know we didn't have any new police vehicle this past year. I wouldn't be surprised if that's on Chief Lake's list or whatever. But what I'm saying is, if we're looking at the expenses of $1.5 million, then that's going to give us the ability to do something on the surplus. So if we had 1.7 million this year, if we shoot for like, if we're at the 1.5 million with a police vehicle or something, then I think we're gonna be in good shape to ask the taxpayers to help us build up that surplus.
I mean, there is also, we have talked, fairly recently about looking into a civil officer for issuing ordinance tickets. That would be additional staff.
Yeah, I think, but we got to look at the revenue. I think we have to look at the revenue, and I think my feeling is if we spend 100% of the revenue for that service, that's okay with me. I'm
It's a
not
break
looking to
even,
make.
right. Right.
I'm not looking to make anything on. I want our merchants to be protected so that there's adequate coverage. But I think if the revenue source is $3,000 and the staffing requirement is $10,000, I don't want any part of that. That's crazy. I think that the downtown business development, I think, if they say, well, look take the $7,500 in funding that you give us for our mission and invest it in parking thing. Well, that's one thing. I don't think they're going to want to do that. I think they're going to want to
Me neither.
keep the revenue source. So I think, realistically, if we have as an objective that let's not look at parking fine revenue as an income source. Let's look at it as the payment for the service. And I'm good with that.
Yeah, if we can make that happen, yeah, that'd be fine with me.
how do we feel about the, like you mentioned, from the standpoint of when we want to be involved with the department heads? I mean, I'm fine, that was the way I do mine. I hire people for a reason. I don't hire them to babysit them. They're responsible for doing it on their own. So I would be of the mind, you do your own department budget. You're the one who knows it best. And then when you present it, I'd like to be maybe involved and have the conversations with them to review their budget earlier than we did. But I don't necessarily think we should be involved at the beginning. That's not what you hire somebody for. If I hire somebody to,
No, I absolutely agree with you there. I think that what happens, though, in these kinds of things is that once the numbers get on the paper,
right.
If it's a wish list kind of budget and the numbers get locked in on the first go-around, then we're in the position of cutting rather than discussing.
Right.
And so it's, again, I don't have a familiarity with the people. I think from what I've seen, okay, and Brian's still here, it looks to me, at least certainly this year, that Chief Lake has done a great job with his budget. I think the water and the sewer managers have done a very good job with their budget. I have faith. If the word gets out that we want to be frugal, but not defer necessary things, I feel as though I have a confidence in those people. I think Sean McGinnis, we've had the opportunity to hire him, and I was able to serve on that. I have a good feeling in terms of how Sean will approach the budget. So anyway, that's sort of my thinking. Your process is probably fine. I think as long as
I'm going to pick it apart before it comes to you guys.
the disciplines that
Right,
we've
exactly.
seen, we want to continue with.
Yeah. But I'm all for having department heads here to explain what their budgets are, fight for their budgets, frankly. And I think it's a healthy way of getting it done, and I want them to have maximum participation.
So we'd still like to have like a larger budget meeting at whatever date works for all of us, because it is but just where department heads will bring in their budgets that they've prepared, and then we'll sit in on the presentations, and then is that generally?
Well, I was looking to, have the budget given to you guys ahead of time, and then, depending on, what we normally would do is have the police department there at one meeting, or two different departments at one meeting to do a discussion presentation, and if you have further questions, we do it at a subsequent meeting. And then we do the same with water and same with sewer. It's kind of what we did last year.
We did a Saturday meeting where we went
Yeah, kind of rotated everybody through.
right through.
Yeah, I think it just felt
Pressed.
very quick.
Yeah, pressed for time.
Like I still say it, I was still happy with what we came out with last time, but
But we had a late start.
I'd like
Also.
a longer process.
I had just come on board, so.
I mean, we've had meetings that have started at 8 o'clock in the morning, and then we order pizza and keep going and didn't stop until 2 or 3 in the afternoon.
Mhm.
So all the department heads came and discussed all aspects of their budget. So that's an option too.
One thing I did want to raise, I know it's been raised before, and I guess I'll raise it one last time because there hasn't really been a vote on it, but the idea of a public works director that would be for utilities only, water and sewer, not general fund. I know the select board is interested in even potentially doing it on its own. But I just, again, I think it's a very important position and pays for itself over time. Anyway, something to talk about.
I'm not interested.
I know Deb's not interested, but there's been no vote. You know, I just, if everybody gives me the tick off, you know, pound sand, O'Keefe, that's fine.
I'd have to see it on, I'd really have to see it on paper where, you know, from a value outline piece before I would even consider it. Again, it's at least through this, I'd love to get through this budget first. And have something to really like.
You know, let's face it, we put in our utilities, we put in some consulting fees,
Right.
things, okay?
Engineering fees.
I'd be happy to, if the town employee that they hire for their work could do the work that we needed, then we'd have a budget
And bill
to
them.
pay them. And, you know, and I think I'd much rather do it that way than accept the full boat type of thing.
Fair enough, fair enough.
And
So should we make a motion?
I don't think we need to make a motion.
You don't think so? Well, if Shane just won't put it in our budget.
You're not gonna
for
put it in our budget.
2019.
We already have those items, Deb, in our expenses.
I know.
It will give a directive
I
to
know,
the select board.
yet, however, it
Yeah.
continues to
Yeah.
burble back up. I'm just saying.
I mean, if you.
Just
there's-
saying.
There's some people out there, well, I realize that there's things that we have to get done. And I realize that some of it is built into the bond or built into our projects, like you were talking, Jerry. But I'm thinking, well, in addition to that, I'm thinking, that's about, with expenses and benefits, that's be 100,000 almost.
On the village?
I don't know, total, and whether it'd be total for the position to fund it. And my thoughts,
That'd be more than that.
well, yeah, my thoughts at this point in time with the financial restraints, it's not just the village, the town of Rockingham, I'm hearing it from people in town. If I'm gonna spend that kind of money, I'd rather spend it on tangible projects that you and I can see and walk on or go into or whatever. And there's certainly, we just heard earlier when the select board was here, there's certainly a number of those here, whether it be 10 Church Place or whatever else. So if we're gonna spend that amount of money, in my opinion, and from what I'm hearing from the people that communicate with me, and I am hearing a little different from a couple of people on the select board, but I'd rather have tangible projects if we're gonna be spending anywhere near that amount of money.
I think the select board needs to go through that process.
Yeah.
I think when we put through our budgets, we need to, if like Brian puts in an estimate for, you know, outside consulting services or engineering services, we're going to know what it's for, whether it's needed, this and that, and how much we're looking for, type of thing. And, you know, judging from our budgets, historical budgets, those numbers are fairly modest. So again, if the town has a position and that person can do this work, then I just as soon pay them rather than somebody from the outside.
All right.
But the employee would be the town's.
Yeah.
Okay, is there any further directives? All right, I think that's.
Okay, thank you.
that's it. And then we just have to audit proposals. Are those ready for?
We gave you the,
I move that we accept the proposal from R.H.R. Smith.
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion?
yeah, I just wanted to mention
I
that.
have a question.
Okay, yeah, we put out, there's a copy of the request for proposals included in here. This is you received a matrix showing what their proposals were. And the bid was for fiscal year 18, which we're in right now, 19 and 20. And so we got responses from 4 different firms. And the lowest cost for the village was R.H.R. Smith, who's our present auditor. The lowest cost to the town actually was Graham and Graham. The difference between Graham and Smith related to the town is only almost $1,700. But the town did recognize that it obviously makes a lot of sense to have one firm that's doing both. So the decision was made on the town side to support the R.H.R. Smith audit proposal. That's all I got.
Shane, the looking at the 2018, which is the year we're in now.
Correct.
Right? Huh?
Yes,
This year right now.
18 is now.
Now, right. The 14,000, how does that compare to this year?
We're in 18.
I mean, the 2017, the budget that's being completed.
I think it's right on, I think it's just about the same, I think.
Because we showed an expense on our financial statement of $5,000 for the village, but then there's also a contribution
Water and
from the
sewer.
water and sewer of, I think,
Yeah.
50%, isn't it?
So there'd be 4,500 apiece.
50.
So,
50, 25, 25.
so that would be 10,000.
Yeah, it's actually less,
That doesn't come out.
it's quite a bit less, and,
Than the bid. The
no.
current cost is less.
I don't have it. I don't have that right now. I'd like
Because it
to,
says, it says village and then single audit.
right, that's if we have to do a single audit, and in this year, we will, because we're getting a good deal of money from the federal government.
So each year it shows a single audit. but
That's
whether
the bid, if we
That's the
need it.
bid.
Yeah, that's included there if we need it or not.
Okay,
So
so
it's-
the
it doesn't-
bid is 11,000,
Correct.
and then it looks like the current year we paid 10,000, so it's like up.
Think
up
about that.
1,000.
But I was surprised that these prices came in the way they did, all, except for the Sullivan and Powers is way out there, but
Right,
I was really surprised. I was expecting quite a bit higher,
right.
in the 20s.
Anyway, thank you for the detail.
Is there any further discussion?
Well,
Deb?
I was wondering why we didn't get a bid or request a bid from Fothergill, Segale, and Valley, who we used to use.
We did. Right?
But it didn't come in.
They didn't
They didn't
submit
respond.
one.
They didn't submit. We also, Mudgett did. We sent it out to everybody we
There were
could.
10 that we sent, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, we sent it to a whole bunch.
and they're probably higher. I mean, the high school uses them, so.
Yeah, they're good. They used to do the village.
I like them. I wasn't, well, my own personal impression, I wasn't impressed with the gentleman who came to talk to us about the auto from R.H.R. Smith. I thought he kind of slapdashed over things. I didn't find him to be as, I don't know, I found him to be a salesman, but I didn't find him to be an auditor as I expected from the FSV people, that's all. So,
Yeah, different styles.
yeah, different styles.
You know, Graham and Graham is
The report's
relatively
different.
local. I'm
Yeah.
sorry?
The report's different, too. The way the report is written is different, too.
Yeah, and I worked with Graham and Graham, and they're in Springfield, they're very local, and easy to, you know, I was hoping they would come in at a better price because they're local. But Smith does a good enough job, and they've done it for the past 3 years, and the price was right. Yeah, particularly for the village, they're clearly the lowest.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, motion passes. So we have overtime and comp time reports. Any comments there?
I'll save you. I'll spare you my comment.
All right. That same all around?
Yeah.
All right, we have the fire and police call logs. Chief McGinnis submitted a report.
Nice little report from Sean. Let me just ask you a question, Shane.
Yeah.
There was one of the calls was an odor investigation of propane.
Okay.
Now,
Yep.
my first thought, if I smelled gas, would be to call Coda and Coda, my gas dealer.
Supplier, yeah.
Type of thing. You know, what is the fire department supposed to do with a gas odor? Investigating a gas odor,
If I may,
Yeah,
that may be a case similar to what we've had across the river where I smell it coming out of my dooryard and I can't tell what house it's coming from, so I can't tell if it's Coda or James or whoever's it may be. So it's, not my job to go looking. But I can call the fire department and say, hey, I'm on Russell Street, and I can smell this from here to the corner of Atkinson, but I don't know where it's coming from. So they come and they investigate, and hopefully with their meters or whatever, they can pretty much pinpoint it.
So they have meters that
Yeah.
that can
Yeah.
do that, check that?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Then there's a lockout of the residents.
That did surprise me. I mean,
Yeah.
I knew that they had
I don't know.
that capability, but like I never
Oh.
would have thought to call.
You know, let's give them the benefit of the doubt in terms of, you know, it could have been, you know, I can get up through that second floor window because I know I leave it open. Do we have a ladder? No. So we call somebody with a ladder. I mean, who knows? But I mean, that stuff's gonna happen.
It's a service
It's a
they offer.
service.
Well, I call a locksmith. I mean, I haven't locked myself out of the house, but I have out of the car.
Yeah, but see,
I call a locksmith.
knowing that I may have a second floor window open, can't get a ladder from somebody, that I'm gonna say, gee, fire department, I'll give them a ring and.
Right, but if you call a locksmith, he's gonna charge you.
I can
to
follow
call
up.
the
It could have
fire
been, a very cold situation,
Yeah.
the weather, they wanted to help somebody out, who knows what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I have no objection to them, doing that. Just,
Yeah.
I was like,
Well, I think, part of education of people is educating them in terms of,
Well, yeah,
you know what I'm saying? I mean, I think what about the cat and never mind the cat.
Oh,
Never mind the cat. I won't ask that question.
So I think it's important to note that on this report from Chief Sean McGinnis, that they've had 3 new candidates that have shown interest in joining their ranks, as well as 3 former members who submitted applications. I think it's important to
It's
see
wonderful, yeah.
the stimulus in the community. I think the public doesn't get this report. We have, unless it's on, is it online?
Yep.
It's online, rockpf.org, so people can go and read it themselves. I think it's a very positive report.
Extremely positive,
Yeah.
yes.
all right. Any comments on the police logs? Kind of spoke for themselves. We have the task list, which we kind of ran down last time. There's a couple things that infrastructure we're talking about in a couple
Changed,
weeks. Most of this,
Oh, yeah, Cal
I'm
walking, we'll be talking about that, yeah.
kind of mentally going down the line, I don't see anything else that we,
On the goals, this village revitalization item, that's something that I hope after budget season to at least try to get going in terms of getting a committee together, talk to some people in the community who might be willing to
yeah, and
be
I think,
active on that.
and BIFTA is reviving the, which is going to be talking about with like
Okay,
adding
that's
additional
true.
lighting to the square, and like they've revived their design, and so that's going
They've
to be.
applied for a $50,000 grant, I think it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good.
There's a couple of typos here on the goals. You look down under policies, and that's supposed to be ordinances, right?
Yep.
And under village, that's supposed to be revitalization, right?
Under, yep.
Yep. About going back up to the task list, the manager's goals should probably be changed, don't you think? Because we just had discussion about that, and there will be a report forthcoming.
You'll have another list.
We'll have another list.
Yeah.
So that's being updated in January, basically.
New list.
You'll have it for your next meeting.
Yeah, thank you. So that's January 23rd?
30th, I believe.
The sale of
That's
property,
joining.
that's done, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's, I meant to mention that in my
What's that?
manager's
Oh, the sale
report,
of property.
that we took in over $46,000 on that auction sale, and we still need to sell the pellet boiler, and it might be a good time of year to do that. Maybe some people's, so I'm not sure of a good estimated price, but I'll need to come up with a good upset price for that and put it back out to auction.
So should the auction complete line come off and then just put pellet boiler in there? That's what we had left, right?
What else? There's the pellet boiler and then a couple other minor things, But we did really well on that.
Super.
Again, thank you,
Yeah.
Stefan, for that. for that idea.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm glad that
It
it
worked
worked
out.
out as
It's
well
really
as
easy to
good
work
on both
with that
sides.
company. It's very, very attentive.
Yeah.
That's the Gundy firm.
So,
But that's town and village, the 46,000. Most of it is village.
Is it village still 27?
There's companies.
27,000.
Village said village received.
I can't remember what the dollar amount was.
the ordinance committee is still meeting Wednesday mornings.
Right, tomorrow, yeah. I had a letter I was supposed to do, I guess I'll work on that. But because of the fire and all of my computers and paperwork all being compromised, and still under ice, by the way, they couldn't get the generators to not gel up because of the weather we've had in the last couple of weeks. So now they've actually put a line in to the inside the house, and they're revitalizing a line so that they can run it in there internally, which will make my neighbors happy too, because it was loud. But once that's done, I'll have stuff. I don't know if anything will be good, but because of that, the ordinance committee was kind enough, members were kind enough to give me copies of what they had so that I could redo the update. And this time, in order to make sure that I don't have any chance of losing it, I sent copies of our revision, our recommendations to each one of them too. So did I send one to you? I'll get you one. I got some more stuff to add. But that way it won't get lost, because if as long as it sits on the cloud, it sits on the internet, it isn't going to be lost. Again, so everyone has a copy of it, so we won't lose it. That changed the way I handle the paperwork.
Let's keep going here.
So I think we're good as far as the list and
Yeah.
the goals. There's some things to update. As far as the next trustees meeting, what's on the agenda as of now? Because I think the fluoride, we don't.
Fluoride thing you've got on there, you want to
That's-
update on that?
We already
Yeah.
voted.
Well,
Yeah, no, but he won't, you wanted
Well, I
a
did before
discussion
the
on
vote.
obligation of the village.
I'd still like to know if we're obligated to continue.
Yeah.
We voted on it.
What the history
it's
is,
done,
yeah, that.
but I'd still like to know.
Parking, I know that Mr. Pugnano was here about that, and will be coming back to the 23rd, possibly with a number of other merchants, so.
Parking enforcement? or
Parking enforcement.
Enforcement?
Yep, that keeps coming back up and back up, because.
You want
we
Chief
go-
Lake here too?
I don't know. If we.
Well, what do we,
We're going to consider things for the budget, but the fact is, right now, there are problems, and they're being irritated or exacerbated. They have, the complaint today that I have seen, I have a photocopy of the people who sat in a parking spot, 6 cars that sat in a parking area since 8 o'clock for 6 straight hours. 6 straight hours. We already talked about the fact that there's only intermittent parking enforcement. And the
does
problem with
somebody
saying
call up the
intermittent
police
is,
department?
you get none. Apparently, a text was sent to the police chief, but in 6 hours, nothing happened. There's still parking there. So the problem with saying intermittent parking enforcement means no parking enforcement gets done on days when officers have other duties that are more critical to get done. So the only way to address it is with another parking enforcement mechanism besides officers. Besides officers who have important tasks to get done, like arresting drug offenders and those sorts of things. So it's coming back up because it is hurting business, and people, like just as Pat was talking about the movie, you have to consider
Yeah, but
on
that's
the
not-
flow
that's
of
a different
traffic.
deal. That's
No,
a
it's
different-
I know, that's a different deal for the holiday. I'm simply saying, having people staying in those parking spots when you've got 2-hour parking is not working, and they're not getting ticketed.
So,
So I'm asking to have it on the 23rd, please.
and maybe Ron,
Yes.
and maybe Ron will be able to address this along this line. So what's an estimated time for an officer to walk, let's just call it the village.
Yeah.
Let's just call it from the top of the hill to, down by Pizza Palace, or, wherever we're planning on,
Just the square?
Really primarily
down
the
the
square.
town? Oh,
This is
okay.
what we're probably more concerned with, where the merchants are circulated. Is it 30 minutes? Is it 20 minutes? Is it?
Probably, I don't know. I would guess 30 minutes, but at this time, you can't chalk the
Snowy
chalk
tires,
tire
yeah.
right now.
Right.
They'd have to do it by video.
I guess I'm just saying, if it's let's ballpark, let's say it's 30 minutes, and it's 2-hour parking, and we're dealing with an 8-hour time period, 9 to 5, right? So literally, that's 4 times going through, that's 2 hours. So you say to Ron, I want 2 hours of time. I don't care if it's one guy. I don't care if it's spread across 4 guys. Take 20 minutes. That's it. That's sorry. I mean, and maybe we could adjust the figures to some degree, but literally, it really is.
Well, you'd have to, take photos or mark tires.
Right.
Right.
And then come
Come back
back
2 hours later.
2+ hours later, but you do it once a
Everybody's-
day or
right.
twice, how many times a day?
They all have cell phones, they can all take a picture.
Yeah, I mean, it really, when you math it out, it's not, I know it sounds like it's not a huge time investment, we can spread it across while we're working out these issues and everything else, but, I mean, it's just, really,
I believe that is essential, yeah. And I think once you start ticketing, the problem will correct itself. But I don't believe it'll take.
Temporarily.
Yes.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You got to stay on it, and there maybe should be some directive as to staying on it.
Then it's not intermittent.
But it's going to take more than 20 minutes, in my opinion, because if you're going to have an officer out there and he's going to be, for example, walking from.
Whatever. I mean,
to whatever.
Whatever.
But
Yeah.
there's people that are going to want to talk to that officer because they're out there in the public. That's part of the community policing, that he interacts, because if he
Yeah,
doesn't, you're going to
that's
have
true.
people, we're going to have complaints that, well, gee, he didn't even want to talk to me. So I think it's going to take a little bit more time than that. So we, keep that in mind, although, yeah, I do agree, there should be a directive of some type or fashion
yeah.
to, ticket these vehicles that are out there more than the 2 hours, or whether it be here or down by the post office for whatever time. But,
And if 6 cars were parked for 6 hours and people were able to ascertain that, and they didn't call the police department, shame on them.
Well,
For
yeah.
God's sakes, let's give us a break.
I was told the reason why the text was set instead is because when they call, they're ignored. So I'm not there, I didn't hear it, but I understand, and from an irritated merchant's perspective, they don't want to have to keep doing that. It's not the merchant's job to rally the police to take care of people who keep parking. It's up to that to be a mechanism that takes care of itself.
I'm
And
all
I
for
will
the
say, we have a good view of the square, but I'm frankly, even when we're not packed with customers, I have too much, speaking as someone who works in local business.
Oh, right.
There's too much to do.
I don't
can't.
expect you to police it. I'm just saying, if somebody observed this 6-hour stretch, and all they did was text the chief,
I know,
then
yeah.
give me a break.
I mean, I don't want to, I know someone's going to give me a ration of, when I get out of here tonight.
I'm going to hear one for this.
But, we have an obligation for employees, in defense of employees at the moment. If I texted the police chief, I'm going to think, gee, I don't know where he is. Is he working today? Or is he on a day off? Or is he involved in something right now? And I didn't see anything in a reasonable amount of time. I'm going to call the PD and say, hey, I want to talk to whoever the officer in charge is. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to call this gentleman here, or I'm going to call one of us 5 here and say, what the hell is going
Say
on?
so.
Because this is the issue.
Yeah.
Just because you made a text, there is some responsibility on the part of a complainant, whether it be anonymous or they give their name and whatever, to follow through,
Listen, in terms of putting this on the agenda, is it to have this kind of one-off type of stuff? What's the purpose of it being on the agenda? We're going to address this as part of our budget.
Because it needs to be resolved. I could tell you personally, I'm sick and tired of getting it from community members who are sending me emails, texts,
Tell them
Facebook
don't-
pages about pictures of things that they've seen, people who are parking over and over hours at a time, who do not get moved, who call the police repeatedly. The gentleman I talked to you about, who said he sent a text to the police, has sent multiple calls to the police over
But-
months and months and not gotten responses.
what-
I want this resolved.
And
I'm
I've-
But
sick
it's
of it.
not going to be resolved, okay?
We can, if we fix the mechanism. You tell that we either have a director for the police department that you go through the manager for, or we do exactly what we talked about doing in the budget, putting in a position and moving monies around. in order
That's
to
the
make sure
budget
we
discussion.
can-
That's
Yes,
not
but
next.
that's not now. And in the meantime, you could have how many businesses leaving here because they're sick and tired of not being able to find parking spaces for their customers.
I don't buy that.
We're here tonight. The manager, the municipal manager, village manager is here. We have a consensus, it sounds like to me. We should give him some direction to call his department head, which is,
This has a star and says, "Step up parking enforcement." That's what it says right here.
And tell him to, whoever the informant is that's bugging Deb, tell him that we want him to open up a line of communication with this individual. It sounds like this individual is very focused on this.
Yeah.
And let's
I
take
didn't say the
advantage
person's
of
bugging me. I
his
said
or
I'm
her
sick of
energy.
hearing about it because we
And
are
just
not
tell him to
getting anything
stop
done.
calling you, call the chief.
It's our job to get something done. It's our job to make sure that we understand what the community wants, and we say that to the manager and/or his department head or whatever, and we get something done. We have not accomplished anything
Right.
except a bunch of rhetoric that we've had at multiple meetings
Right,
that
but
has
what-
done nothing.
But Deb, it's at any, you come across as, we have to provide parking enforcement at any cost.
And I didn't say that. And you put those words in my
Well,
mouth. I
that's
didn't.
what you keep sounding like.
No, there are ways to do it that don't add extra costs, and we
Well,
haven't
then
really
tell us,
investigated
come
it
in
all.
with a proposal.
Okay, can we just,
Let's
we'll
do it on
write down,
23rd.
So much
we'll
waste.
write down our point counterpoints.
Yeah, let's
And on the
stop
23rd,
wasting
I'll
time.
be talking to the chief, and we'll be working
Yeah.
on a few things.
Thank you.
I just wanted to also mention, on that subject, though, there have been some instances where there's businesses, including the town, getting some work done. And we've, I know across the street, the hardware store, they had Portland glass there for days and days.
Sure.
A whole slew of vehicles, and I heard a little feedback on that, but, they're working, and they got to get that done. We had that this past week with dealing with our alarm system. We had 2 vans in front of the building for several hours, so, because of tools and things, that's nature, you have to have them out there. So I know that I'm conscious of that, we try to keep that to a minimum, but there are going to be instances where someone's getting work done and they have
Sure.
to have a vehicle out in
I mean-
front. And I was just thinking, and I don't know if this is the truth or not, but, with the temperature of the past week, I would estimate that it would, I wouldn't want to send staff out walking a beat in some of the weather that we had. And I wouldn't doubt that that's part of it. And a lot of people don't, when it's real cold like that, they don't want to walk very far.
Well, Shane,
So they're going
it's
to
warm up
take the
between now and
$5.
Friday, have them get the rain gear out,
Yeah.
But not in defense of that, I came down here for a noon meeting recently. I was
Yeah.
driving my pickup truck, and somebody gave me a little bit of a hard time because I was parked out front, and it hinged on the 2-hour thing, which I was very prompt about what time I spent and where I went when I left here to buy a meal because I had to skip my lunch from my
You've got to do an
work.
executive session.
Yeah.
And then they thought I was driving a town pickup truck, and I said, "Take a look at the license plate. It's green and white." But
We
did I
have
get
to do an executive
Did I get an
session.
apology? No.
We have to do an executive session.
All right, so we'll have a further discussion about this on the 23rd. So approving orders, bills, and warrants.
So
Make the
moved.
motion.
Second.
I guess, Carrie, you can pick.
You owe me a
Okay.
Pepsi.
You get that?
Any discussion? All in favor?
I have one.
Aye.
Oh, sorry.
I have one.
Sorry.
The December 8th, 2017, page 8. We paid $187.49 to Nemrick for IT outside support of the rec center surveillance system. Our agreement with the town is that we pay only water and wastewater, not IT support.
On that
Per
one,
contract.
that was split 1/3 village, 2/3 town, and it wasn't just the rec center. It was also having to deal with all of the servers. That includes police and fire over there.
But the bill
Says
said
that.
rec. I didn't see anything for fire or police. And I looked at the copy of the bill.
Yeah, I looked at it too. And it was, I'm the one who coded that because it had 2 different issues. It wasn't just the rec center. And furthermore, on the rec center, the real reason for the the system we're looking to put in there is for police and public safety. But that invoice did encompass not just rec, but it also encompassed other services.
Okay, but even public safety is not one of the agreed upon
Okay.
costs to the village.
Right, I think it was $170, but
Yeah,
it was absolutely not just the rec department. That's why I coded it.
Okay.
Look for more clarity in the
Yeah.
future. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Other business, I'll just be very quick with this. We had a letter submitted by a local business owner and property owner. And essentially, I just would like to, is there going to be any action from you, Shane, on, it's about an outstanding bill that the village agreed to pay, but there's some dispute. Is there going to be any action on that on your part?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Then
Okay,
we'll do
I
it at
will,
the next meeting.
I will hand you the letter and we can talk about it next meeting. I guess
23rd?
on the 23rd. All right. That is all. We have a need for executive session.
Oh,
Do you have the
so that's it
motion?
for other business?
Oh, sorry. Anyone else have any other business?
I do. I have to ask the board's leave to not be in the village for the rest of the year because of the fire. The only place I've been able to find to move is in Cambridgeport. And so I have talked to the Secretary of State, Deputy Secretary of State about it. Statute says if you move out of the village, but because of the fire having displaced me and I will be returning to the village, that's, his perception was that I would be all right. But I do realize that officially I have to ask my board members for dispensation.
Would you like a motion?
Or
Or just, I mean, a
consensus, or what,
consensus, 'cause-
I don't know, I mean,
Good.
I am fine.
what's that?
Yep.
Do a motion?
As long as you lay off this parking thing, Deb. I'll be in favor.
You know, if I do the parking enforcement myself for free, will you get off my back?
I want to make the motion.
Okay, so I'm not doing that. I'll recuse myself from this.
Yep.
so.
I'll make the motion. That we allow, that we encourage Deb to continue her service during this period of unfortunate interruption.
All right.
I'll second.
Second, just any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen.
You're welcome. Any other business? If not, executive session. We don't have a motion, but it's
Is it the same
for
one?
labor.
Oh, it's the same motion as, yeah. Do we have that?
Yeah.
Is it the two-part one?
It's in the minutes, yeah.
Oh, it is in the minutes.
Might be in the minutes, let's see.
I believe it
Yeah,
was.
please.
As soon as we find it. Where'd it go?
No. Oh, wait a minute.
thought it
Yes,
was.
executive session number 1 on page 4.
Okay.
So if you just read
Page
the,
4.
that's the
Okay.
one, right, Shane?
Page 3, page 4.
Labor relations agreements?
Labor relations, yes.
I move to find the premature general public knowledge of labor relations agreements with employees and confidential attorney-client communications will clearly place the municipality at a substantial disadvantage by disclosing legal procedures.
Wait, second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Do we have to have a second one?
I
Yeah.
move
Okay.
that we enter executive session, labor agreements with employees and confidential attorney-client communications for the purposes of labor relations, negotiations, and professional legal services under provision of Title I, Section 313A1 of the Vermont statutes, and invite Shane
And Carrie.
Keefe and Kerry Bennett to attend.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you.
Aye.
Pit stop.